You know, we're about to pull back the curtain on 5 words that you probably use all the time. But what you might not know is that behind their simple definitions are these incredible stories, full of gods, eagles, philosophy, and, well, personality. It really sounds like the start of a weird joke, doesn't it? I mean, what on earth could possibly connect those 3 things? Well, believe it or not, the answer isn't a punchline. The connection is actually hidden in the secret lives of our words. Yeah, their stories show us how a simple object can become this powerful, abstract idea, and how the words we choose really do shape how we see everything, from power structures to someone's personality.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the divine power of aegis, then we'll climb up to the heights of an airy, explore the whole idea of aesthetic, and then we'll wrap up by looking at the difference between the genuine charm of being affable versus the fake front of being affected.
First up, aegis. This is a word that really carries the weight of ancient myth and, the comfort of protection. So today, when you hear that something is being done under the aegis of an organization, we just mean it's happening under their sponsorship or protection. But this modern, kind of abstract idea, it actually started as a very real, very powerful object in Greek mythology, the shield of the gods. But here's the part that'll blow your mind. That divine shield, the all-powerful aegis, the word literally means goatskin. I'm not kidding. The myth says it was made from the skin of the goat that nursed the infant Zeus. It's amazing, right? It just goes to show how even the most divine symbols were rooted in the natural earthy world. The ultimate symbol of power started out as something surprisingly humble. And you can see that whole journey right here on this timeline. It starts as a physical thing in mythology, it jumps into the English language, still tied to the gods, and then, boom, by the late 1800s, it becomes that powerful metaphor for sponsorship that we all use today. All right, so from the metaphorical high ground of the gods, let's move to a very, very literal high place. Our next word is airy. So an airy is, first and foremost, the nest of a bird of prey, like an eagle, perched way up high on a cliff or a mountain. It just gives you this sense of remoteness, security, and a totally commanding view of the world down below. Now, what's so fascinating is how we basically just stole this word from the birds. We started calling our own places airies if they shared those same qualities, high up, secluded, and with a killer view. So, that corner office on the 50th floor, or that amazing penthouse apartment, yep, that's a modern-day airy. Okay, so from the commanding view from an airy, let's pivot to a totally different kind of view, how we actually see the world itself. We're moving on to aesthetic, a word that's all about how we perceive and judge beauty. Aesthetic is a pretty layered word. On one hand, it can be a whole branch of philosophy. On another, it can be a way to talk about something's beautiful qualities. And then in everyday talk, it's just a label for a personal style. Your aesthetic is basically your vibe, what you find pleasing to the eye. But its origin is where things get really interesting. It comes from a Greek word that means of sense perception. So at its very core, aesthetic isn't just about what's beautiful. It's about the fundamental act of just perceiving the world through all of our senses. Now, let's take that whole idea of perception and apply it to people. How do we describe someone who is just genuinely pleasant and super easy to be around? Well, the word is affable. Now, being affable isn't just about being polite. It describes a person who is truly easy to approach, someone who just puts you at ease and makes conversation feel totally natural and friendly. And its origin confirms this perfectly. It comes directly from the Latin verb that means to speak to. So an affable person is quite literally someone who is easy to talk to. It's really that simple and that profound. And here's a really fascinating little quirk about this word. According to data from Merriam-Webster, affable is used way more often to describe men than women. Now, this isn't a comment on reality, of course, but it's just an interesting pattern in how the word actually gets used out in the wild. Okay, let's move on to our final word, and you'll see how this creates a really sharp contrast. What happens when that ease and friendliness isn't genuine? Well, that's when you get the word affected. So, affected describes any behavior that is put on, that's artificial, and just plain unnatural. It is the absolute opposite of authenticity. Think of an affected accent, or that kind of forced laugh at a joke that wasn't even funny. It's a total performance. So when you see them side by side, the contrast couldn't be clearer. Affable is all about being genuine, natural, at ease. Affected is defined by pretense and artificial strain. The line between them really boils down to one simple thing: authenticity. So what a journey. We've seen Aegis transform from a humble goatskin into this huge concept of sponsorship. We saw Airy fly from a cliffside nest to a skyscraper. Aesthetic evolved from deep philosophy to just your personal vibe. And we've drawn a very clear line between being genuinely affable and just being affected. Ultimately, what you should really take away from this is that knowing a word's origin story isn't just trivia. It unlocks a much deeper, richer understanding of what our words really mean and how they connect us to the world. Every single word we choose carries a piece of history with it. So the question is, now that you know some of these stories, what story will you tell? Thanks for joining this explainer.